This is the Sunday stream opening song because the other song is copyrighted. La 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 la. Oh look, here comes Dog Cat Fox.
Hi, Sky.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday stream. The stream I do on Sundays because Sunday is the day to stream on Sundays. Hope you're all doing well on this beautiful Sunday morning. It actually is kind of nice out right now. Nice golden hue to the world with the sun shining and everything. It's not overcast like sometimes it is on a Sunday morning. So I appreciate that. Also, I suppose daylight savings time has done something to help out with that. So not that I like daylight savings time, but hey, what are you going to do? Anyway, how are y'all doing this morning? Hope you're doing well. Who's joining me for this little bit of an oddball subject matter, I suppose, compared to my usual fare? I'll talk about that in a moment. Noah Sencio, good morning. Keeverdam, good morning. And thank you, Keeverdam, as always, for adding the GoFundMes to the chat. If you guys will take a look at the GoFundMes pinned to the top of the chat box, I'd appreciate it. Take a look at for our friends, Moonshock, Natalie, Angela Ariaga, James Colley, and Rhonda. If you can donate to those, that would be very much appreciated. If you can't, please do share them out on social media. Every little bit helps, so thank you ahead of time for that. And thank you, Keeverdam, for helpfully providing those, as always. Fun Time Bats, good morning. Rotten Corpse, good morning. Kiro Soldier, good morning. John Trioxin, good morning. You're Batman. I don't believe you. Advocatus Diaboli, good morning. Mike R., good morning. Who else is here? So everything jumps around. Matthew James, good morning. Fostonia, good morning. Urkele Di Stefano, good morning. Zed the Snarky, good morning. Miranda Stone, good morning. Michael Sander, good morning. Resolute Germ, good morning. Shadowclaw, good morning. Derek LaRue, good morning to you. And thank you so much, as always, for your continued support and generosity. Very much appreciate it. Hope you're having a good Sunday, and I hope you enjoy the show. Anybody else here? This is Kyle. Good morning. Ooh, is that a new avatar, Kyle? Ooh, very, very creepy, very intimidating. No Name. Good morning. Old Guy Gamer. Good morning. And I think that's everybody I can see. If I missed you, if you're lurking, if you're in the future, good morning. So yes, unlike most Sunday streams, because I did a little stream yesterday talking about my usual fare of DEI in different places, like the government and so on, I thought I'd take a little bit of a detour today. We'll talk about something that I'm relatively passionate about, but isn't particularly all, caught up in social politics or other such things. And that's the Punisher, my favorite comic book character, one of my favorite comic book characters from my childhood, and still to this day, despite what they've done to him over the last several years. But there's been rumblings that they'll bring the Punisher back to the MCU officially through Disney Plus and the upcoming Daredevil series and so on, that a new Punisher series may be on the rise. And in that spirit, I suppose, in my curiosity, I thought I'd take a look at Punisher news, because if you can believe it, there actually is some Punisher news, things that have been published within the last few days or so about the Punisher. Although the first one we're going to look at isn't really new because I've heard this before, but I thought I'd at least take a look at it. And then we'll take a look at another article about the Punisher. If you don't know who the Punisher is, well, let me tell you. I'll tell you a little story. There was a guy named Frank Castle, whose family original name was Castiglione, or Castiglione. I'm not quite sure exactly how to say it. It all depends on who's pronouncing it. Anyway, Frank Castle was a veteran of Vietnam. Special forces, covert ops, Marine hardcore. Yeah. And that has changed over time because they've set him, obviously, as time progresses in real life, they have to keep sort of moving up into which wars was he involved in. So he went from Vietnam to the Gulf War to Afghanistan. And now I think they've just made up a fake war so they don't have to keep moving him throughout history. They can just say he was involved in some war or another, which I think is kind of silly. But There you go. Anyway, Frank Castle, Vietnam veteran, comes home from Vietnam, has the Vietnam veteran experience, as it were, back in the day where veterans of Vietnam were not given praise. They were seen as part of the corruption and problem of the government and everything, much to their injustice. But anyway, so he's home from Vietnam, and he decides he gets back with his wife, and he's got his 2 kids, Frank Jr. And Lisa, and his wife, and they're going to go have a picnic in Central Park, New York City, usual setting for most Marvel comics. And they're having their picnic in Central Park. And then Frank Jr. and Lisa are flying a kite. And this kite, as you do back in the olden days when you flew kites in Central Park at a picnic. And this kite got caught in a tree, and the kids go running after it. And in the course of trying to get their kite back, they witness in a dark corner of the park a mob hit. They are witness to a crime. And the mobsters see that the children and perhaps even the rest of the family, it depends on the telling, have seen this, and they don't want to have any witnesses. And so they gun down the whole family. The kids die, wife dies, husband survives. Barely. And in waking up and discovering that his entire family's been slaughtered, he goes on a one-man war on crime. Frank Castle does, as the Punisher. Now, I've talked about this before on previous streams, but the important element to the Punisher's origin story is that Frank Castle was an innocent victim of crime. His family was an innocent victim of crime. Doesn't matter what Frank Castle might have been or might have done in the wars previous that he was involved in and so on. It could have happened to anybody, but it happened to him. And a lot of storytellers in years since have screwed up that origin story and somehow made it his fault, or he was involved in it somehow, tangentially or otherwise. But the whole point of the Punisher is that he was innocent. And therefore, anyone can project themselves into the role of this guy who, for no reason under the sun that makes any sense, has his entire life stripped away and wants revenge. That's the stub, the sort of simplistic, bare bones origin story of the Punisher. And I always liked the Punisher because he was much more down to earth as a character. Not a lot of superheroics going on. Not a lot of superpowers and things. When the Punisher was good, it was like that comic book that they kept behind the counter because they didn't want you to see it because it was just so visceral. And the best issues of the Punisher, as far as I'm concerned, were in the first 50 or so of the original Unlimited run. And I have my own collection of most of them. But anyway, so I have a love for the Punisher for various reasons, and I'll probably talk about more as we go. But let's take a look at this first article. What creator thinks of Punisher logo turning up all over? Not exactly the best grammar in the world, but there you go. This is by Christopher Burrell, Chicago Tribune, published March 16th, 2024. Now, I've heard about the creator of the Punisher not being jazzed about the logo being all over the place in years past. So this isn't exactly new news, but it is a new article. So I feel like it might be a little bit recycled, but we'll find out as we go. Normally, when anybody turns 50, you want to congratulate them. But the Punisher outlived his welcome somewhere during the Reagan administration. Oh, did he? Well, because I was reading The Punisher back in the 90s, and he was awesome. So, who are you again? I haven't read this, by the way. I have not read this yet. I already knew a little bit about how Jerry Conway was not jazzed about how The Punisher had seeped into certain elements of the world. But this article in particular, I have not read. He is an artifact of a time when Americans could still agree broadly on what was right or wrong, moral or criminal. He should have died decades ago, and yet there he is every day glowering. What? Probably you don't know you're looking at him. His cultural white noise to many, he's cultural white noise to many and a cultural dog whistle to others. He stares at you from t-shirts and tattoos, and most noticeably, those little stickers on the backs of cars. or rather, typically, from the back windows of big trucks and SUVs. The bigger the wheels, the more likely it'll have a Punisher sticker, looking super spooky and warning you without really saying anything. The Punisher logo is a skull with 4 teeth jutting downward. Depends on the rendition, I suppose. Like a dagger, or, as I like to think of it, a universal symbol of solidarity among people who only have 4 teeth. Okay, well, again, it depends on what version of the logo you're talking about. My favorite version, on it, obviously, from the thumbnail of this video, is the 90s version with the very squared off, right-angled Punisher logo, but to each their own, I suppose. I think our author's coming into this with a certain, I don't know, antipathy towards people that like the Punisher. I don't know. I'm just getting that feeling. The Punisher skull is a favored symbol among white nationalists, Proud Boys, terrorist groups, and January 6th insurrectionists. It's been found tattooed on mass shooters and would-be killers who were stopped before they could open fire. It's also been adopted by members of the military, notably Iraq veteran Chris Kyle, who bragged of spray painting the skull across the Middle East in his memoir, American Sniper, helping popularize it among frontliners. And for a long while, it's been popular with some police, including Chicago police. A few years ago, Channel 2 CBS News reported that a Chicago officer wore a Punisher patch on his uniform during a 2019 Christmas Eve raid in which police forced their way into a home and pointed guns at the wrong kids. In 2017, a pair of Winnebago County deputies were ordered to stop handing out unofficial business cards with a Punisher logo. There are many similar examples nationwide. Okay, so the Punisher symbol makes people bad? Or, okay. In fact, right now, you can buy a Punisher patch or pin for your uniform. The skull topped cleverly with a Trumpian wave of blonde hair. Okay. From the Chicago Cop Shop, a locally based business specializing in custom Chicago police merchandise. The online shop for the Fraternal Order of Police Chicago Lodge Number 7 have sold items with the logo too, as have gift shops of police and fire unions across the country, often with a thin blue line accenting the skull to reinforce your support of law enforcement. And that's funny, or to be specific, stupid. Okay, first off, let us remember why the Punisher exists. So there is some basis for criticism here. I'm not going to deny it or something. The Punisher, as a character, he created himself and exists because the legal system and law enforcement is faulty in his mind, right? When his family was killed, depending on the telling, again, either the authorities were unable and or unwilling to track down who did the deed. And so the Punisher took, justice into his own hands. He's a vigilante. He operates outside of the law. So, yes, to glorify the Punisher as a symbol of law enforcement is kind of stupid. Okay? The Punisher kills people. All right? He is the judge, jury, and executioner for criminals and people that he decides are worthy of punishment. He doesn't always kill them, but more often than not, he does. So, yes, the Punisher being used as a symbol by law enforcement is kind of stupid. Not going to deny that. But to also say that it is somehow now a symbol of hatred or white nationalism and everything else, I've seen lots of different people of all stripes be a fan of the Punisher. So he has a point, but he's overplaying it, I think. The Punisher, who debuted in Marvel Comics in 1974, hated cops. Well, no, he didn't like the justice system. He thought the justice system was ineffective. He didn't hate cops. In fact, the Punisher, generally speaking, leaves cops alone. Like women, children, police officers, and military veterans. Those are essentially the 4 demographics the Punisher either does not touch, or in the case of either cops or military officers, they have to have done something really demonstrably bad for him to kill them. He generally stays away from all of those kinds of people. So that doesn't make any sense. Now, I can't tell you for sure what he said or what the dialogue was in his first appearance or two. So maybe the Punisher of 1974 says, "I hate the police" or something. That's possible. But the character as established over time doesn't quite operate like that. He was not a fan of the police or any military command. No, that's also not true. He respected military officers, at least competent military officers. No, he was not a fan of authority. That's not true either. Okay, it's a bit more nuanced than that. The Punisher had a respect for the chain of command, unless someone was incompetent or putting their soldiers in harm's way needlessly. And he had respect for people that cared about their soldiers and knew what they were doing. Okay, anyway, he was a morally ambiguous anti-hero. No, he had a code of honor. He was not morally ambiguous. A traumatized Vietnam vet whose family was murdered by the mob and then dedicated himself to hunting down the worst of the worst. Oh, okay. So I thought there was moral ambiguity there. Oh, but now he has a code of honor. Okay. He had no superpowers, only a lot of guns. And however righteous he might have seemed, unlike the traditional superheroes who stood in his way, his favorite method of stopping bad guys was killing them. Yep. He was nihilistic to an extent. Vigilante justice, yeah. Borderline insane, no. A bully who detested bullies, yes. He wasn't borderline insane. Okay, this is the thing that a lot of people don't seem to understand about the Punisher. They might want him to be insane, right? They might want him to be just some kind of crazy. He's not. He's not. He is methodical. He is reasoned. He is logical, and he's vicious and deadly. But he's not nuts. It might make people feel better to think that the character of the Punisher is just some Looney Tune who's running around murdering people indiscriminately. He's not. He has emotional issues, certainly. He has psychological problems, but he's not crazy. That's how you can project yourself into this person. You can understand where he's coming from. Now, obviously, we're talking about a character who has been rewritten and reinvented multiple times over the decades. But I'm talking about the core of the character. Anyway, yet he came to symbolize in some later Marvel iterations and as a fetish for the alt-right, a viable and extrajudicial system of law and order by any means necessary. Okay, well, anybody can take anything and twist it into whatever they want it to be. May I introduce you to Name Your Holy Book? But the actual core of the character is the core of the character. And as far as alt-right or white nationalist or whatever else this guy's talking about, I'd refer you to, oh God, what was it? Punisher issue. Oh, which one was it? Sorry, I gotta remember. It's in the early 40s or 30s. Let's see. Yeah, number 44. I should have known because it's right before my favorite comic book. Number 45. Number 44, the Punisher defended a flag burner from white supremacist rednecks. Yeah, if you can believe it, the Punisher, Vietnam veteran, witnessed a black rapper, a teenage black rapper, burning a flag in protest, and he defended this guy from the redneck white supremacists who were chasing him as a result. Okay? If you're going to talk about the Punisher as a symbol for this, that, and the other, look at the actions of the character himself, not the people that have decided to turn it into something he wasn't, or cops that decide to use him as some sort of symbol of law enforcement, which is stupid. Look at what the character actually does. But this guy doesn't care. He doesn't know. Right? He doesn't give a rip. He just, how do people interpret? Well, what is the message from the character? What's the message from the writers that made this character? He came to represent, ironically, a lack of moral ambiguity. I thought he was morally ambiguous. So now he has a lack of moral ambiguity? What? And you know who doesn't like that? Jerry Conway, who co-created The Punisher 50 years ago for Marvel as a second-tier sort of villain for Peter Parker to spar with in issue number 129 of The Amazing Spider-Man. Let's see. Just want to double check a couple things here because I don't trust this guy's bona fides when it comes to this character at this point. I really don't. Quote, the Punisher was always about gray areas, he said. Certainly. Quote, he was created as a moral in-between. You were meant to have an ambivalent attitude towards him. He was trying to do right, but in the wrong way, which is a struggle a lot of people go through. And yet a lot of the people who embrace him now, militants, the darker side of police forces and military, these people never see grays. Seems a bit all or nothing. They see black and white. They think of him as simply righteous, and they don't get it. The Punisher was saying justice failed and didn't live up to his personal standards, so here he is, which is a totally sociopathic attitude. Yes, it's true, but he wasn't nuts, and he had a code. At best, Conway, 72, imagines a misreading. Probably. At worst, he sees the Punisher logo being co-opted by neo-fascists with oppressive aspirations. Quote, though fascism for some of these people involves far too much thinking, unquote. Okay. We spoke the other day. He said that he hadn't been aware that the Punisher was turning 50 this month. He'd been in and out of hospitals lately, he said. He has pancreatic cancer and has had successful surgeries, but also complications, rehab facilities. He thinks about what he'll be remembered for. His comic book bona fides run deep. He wrote the famous The Night Gwen Stacy Died story that's now a foundational part of Spider-Man lore. He wrote Justice League comics for 8 years. He co-created the first Miss Marvel, as well as The Man-Thing and Killer Croc, Firestorm, and Werewolf by Night. Quote, but the Punisher, that's what I'll be known for, he said, so I have conflicted feelings, unquote. I don't think that's all you'll be known for, but maybe that's just me. The Punisher has been the subject of 3 films and a Netflix series. Also a short film, but I guess you're not counting that one. He's so inseparable from the lore of a much bigger character, Daredevil, he's expected to return to TV later this year when Disney Plus releases a rebooted Daredevil. I don't know if he's inseparable from the lore of Daredevil, but if you say so. I honestly, when I was collecting the Punisher back in the day, Daredevil showed up once in a while. I mean, I'm talking old school first 50 issues or so of the first Unlimited series. Daredevil might have showed up in there somewhere, but okay. Conway said a great many Punisher fans tell him they simply like the skull logo. It's cool. Yet it's also become a cultural lesson in unintended consequences. The logo didn't do anything to anybody. What? 50 years ago, Conway and late artists Ross Andrew and John Romita Sr., who designed the logo, working from a sketch by Conway, created the Punisher partly as a comment on the law and order mandates of the Nixon administration and 1960s and 70s conservatives, fearful that cultural change, civil rights, and police reforms were feeding violent crime. The Punisher fit neatly into the era's love of vigilante exploitation, with no period at the end. And that's the end of the article. Okay, well, I don't know if our author knows this, but the Punisher's real popularity was in the 80s and the 90s, especially in the 80s with drug crime. You want to look at like most of the stories in the early issues of the Punisher, ripped from the headlines. You know how you'd hear that from Law and Order episodes and things like ripped from the headlines? Yeah, the Punisher taking down like crack dealers and things, that was a big theme in the 80s because it was happening in the real world. People could relate to the rise in crime and gangs and everything else. And the Punisher was kind of a psychological release, you know, because it seemed like the world was being overwhelmed at the time by crime and drugs and everything else. And the Punisher, as a fictional avatar for people's frustrations, was somebody who was not waiting for the shoe to drop or the next drive-by to take place, but taking out the bad guys before they did anything. Now, is that a way to operate in the real world? No, but then it's fiction. So I'm not that jazzed with this profile, if you can believe it. There are some points in there. It's like, yeah, okay, police officers showing off the Punisher logo, not the best look. Kind of mixed messages there. But otherwise, look at the totality of the character. How somebody decides to interpret it, that's on them. That's not on the character. Like Jerry Conway has nothing to apologize for. Right? If some Looney Tune out there gets a tattoo on him of, I don't know, Taylor Swift, and then does something terrible, has Taylor Swift now become a symbol of that thing that this person decided to do? No. But you could just say, oh, well, the bad guys have taken over. And so now we have to surrender to the bad guys. Now, can you imagine a situation where that might have happened? Where they just sort of like give up and turn over the symbol of the Punisher to bad guys, to criminals, to nut jobs. Well, they've done it. And I had a picture for this, but apparently I have lost it. Hold on a second here. Oh boy, I was trying to be so smooth and have a picture ready of this, but apparently I screwed up. Okay, let me find this here. See if I can do this. Yeah, this is live TV, everybody. I could have sworn I had a picture ready of this. Apparently not. Okay, well, let's try this then, since I'm coming late to the party here. Okay, so yeah, recently in Marvel Comics, they decided to surrender the Punisher skull logo to the bad actors and the bad guys and come up with this nonsense. Oh, I gotta, hold on. No, that's not supposed to be a background. That's supposed to be an overlay. That's my bad. Let me try that again. Oh, boy. Oh, boy, guys. Oh, boy. I'm just showing off my professionalism here today. I really am. Try that again. Good gravy. Here we go. How's about this? There you go. So you've got, that's not my favorite Punisher logo ever, but that's closer than nothing. Anyway, off to the left there, that's what they changed it to. They tried to abandon the old Punisher logo. They surrendered it to the bad actors and completely changed the character around. He doesn't have guns anymore. He's got samurai swords. They effectively retired / killed off Frank Castle recently because they don't know what to do with the character, and he's just too much for them or something. A lot of politics and things. So yeah, what do you do when bad actors take hold of a symbol or something? You surrender it. That's what you do. You surrender it. You don't try to reinforce the core of the character in your publication and in your comic books and things. No, you completely redesign and reimagine the character to get away from that thing that bad people are using it for or something. Yeah. Anyway, I could go on about that, but let's move on to the second article I had here. And as I prepare this up, let me see what you guys are saying in the chat, just to take my mind off for a second here, because I'm a little frustrated with that article and also that I didn't have that picture ready. I had a picture. I thought I did. Shadowclaw, I remember the fight scene with the Russian in the 90s movie. That was brutal. Yeah, that was so brutal. In fact, the scene, the part where the Punisher stabs him in the shoulder was a real stab. Kevin Nash, the wrestler actor who was playing the Russian, he actually stabbed him in the shoulder with a knife. That's not fake. And he just kind of took it and stood there and acted through it, and he got some stitches afterwards, and it was fine. When the Frank Castle gets thrown out into the hallway through a wall, that's really Thomas Jane. He really did that stunt all by himself. And as hard as he hit that wall, yeah, it was all sort of like, vulcanized rubber or something to try to soften the blow a bit, but didn't do much. That fight scene was brutal. Although I'm not as big a fan of the whole Welcome Back Frank storyline that's pulled from. I thought it kind of, and especially how they did it in the movie, kind of dumbed down the character quite a bit. But that fight scene certainly was epic. Darren Root, time for fun facts. The Punisher Skull Teeth are magazine clips. That is, depending on the design of the costume, the teeth of the skull have been pouches for extra magazine clips and things before. Sometimes it's just a flat, symbol on his chest. But the best explanation I ever had for the skull, and I forget which comic book this was. It was an early one. In one of his war journal entries or something, he says the big white skull on his chest draws the fire of his enemies because it seems like such an easy target. And that's where all the Kevlar is. So it's meant to be not only an intimidation factor, but also a psychological factor tactically. That's part of the rationale that I was given, let's say, in one of the early issues. That is an awful logo. Yeah, the new Punisher, and it only lasted for the run where they decided to retire Frank Castle. They've introduced a new Punisher now, which I think has already been canceled because nobody wants to read not Frank Castle the Punisher. But they think they know better than what the audience wants, so they keep trying to like virtue signal their way out of the existence of the Punisher and try to change him into something else, and it's just ridiculous. Just ridiculous. Faustonia, as a Punisher fan, what are your thoughts on the article writer's firsthand knowledge of the character? This is not a person who knows enough about or has any love for the character. Well, you don't necessarily have to have love for the character to be able to report on him, obviously. You could like read the character and not like it at all, but at least give an honest accounting of the character's attributes, his behaviors, and some of the other things that he's been depicted as doing that frame the character's sense of morality and code of honor and everything else. Hand waved away things. He hates cops. He doesn't hate cops. He has no respect for the justice system. A police officer is trying to do their job. Just about any story that doesn't have like even the most corrupt cop on the planet, most times the Punisher will leave him alive because killing police officers is not a good look overall. Even a corrupt cop is still a cop. And B, he still thinks that sometimes people have to have their own, because here's the thing. If there's a corrupt cop and the Punisher just offs the guy, well then more likely than not, the totality of that cop's corruption will never be known. The Punisher would rather have that cop live and have his corruption be uncovered in order to show the hypocrisy of the police officers and potentially reform things on the side. He does not want corrupt cops dead. He wants them there as evidence. Okay, because he's not nuts. This is the thing. The Punisher's not a thoughtless psychopath. So yeah, police officers, he doesn't hate cops, and he has respect for police officers who are good cops. You see this time and time and time and time again. He will work with and defend good cops. So anyway, I might be getting a little passionate about the whole thing. Darren Root, another fact, Frank has a robot that's main purpose is punching him in the gut as an endurance trait. Yeah. Well, he's got a lot of things that Microchip cooked up for him over the years. But I always like the issues where Microchip is doing something that is grounded in reality as far as mechanics and things. Not too sci-fi, not too superhero. My favorite issue of The Punisher, and in fact, I think I actually do have a picture of this at hand here. I think. Maybe I can. Somewhere. Yes. Okay. Here we go. The best issue of The Punisher, my favorite issue all time, is Punisher number 45. Punisher number 45, One-Way Fair, which I only discovered relatively recently, was the very first issue that Chuck Dixon ever wrote for The Punisher. And Chuck Dixon is a legend in Punisher writing and storycraft. I don't want to tell you too much about it. I did a reading of One-Way Fair a long time ago on my channel. You can look it up if you want. But if you can find a digital copy of this, I can't more highly recommend it. It is everything you need to know about the world of the Punisher. Everything. It's only like 22 pages or something, but there's so much going on there, and you get such a sense of the character, the world he lives in, and you want to talk about moral ambiguity? Holy cats. The ending of this one, there are some things in basic, shelved comics of the 80s and 90s. There's some elements in The Punisher in early issues, especially 45 and a few earlier than that, is subject matter you would never see on the rack. You would never expect to see in just a superhero selection. Some of this stuff, like written for mature audiences, There's no warning on this. This does not say this is for ages, 15 and up or something. This is just right there. This is something I picked up when I was a kid, and I was blown away, no pun intended. And yeah, this is why I love The Punisher. It didn't treat the audience with kid gloves. All right. It took you right straight into it, especially The Punisher in the olden days. So Punisher number 45, One Way Fair, best issue of The Punisher ever. Everything you need to know. Okay, moving on to the next article, the second and last article. I only got two. This is from Screen Rant, which, has dubious quality, but all the same. Now is the perfect time for Marvel's unmade Punisher movie to happen 12 years after it was pitched. Boy, oh boy, I didn't even know that there was a Punisher movie that wasn't made. I'm sure there was, because there's been 3 Punisher films so far. You had the Dolph Lundgren film from like 1989, I believe, thereabouts. You had the Thomas Jane Punisher movie from 2004, and you had the Ray Stevenson Punisher Warzone from, was it 2008 or there around there, something like that. I have appreciation for all 3 films. None of the 3 films quite got everything right, although as far as portrayal goes, Ray Stevenson knocked it out of the park. As far as passion for the character, I can't fault Thomas Jane too much, even though there was some problems both with his movie and the short film Dirty Laundry that he did afterwards. Dirty Laundry, which you can find on YouTube for free and everything. Short film, Thomas Jane, not official, completely sort of essentially a fan film. I had a real deep love for that short for a long time. And I thought it was probably the best representation of the Punisher. And then I talked to, on a stream for Midnight's Edge, I talked to Andre Eisenhar, and I'm probably screwing up his last name. I know everybody does, but I apologize. Anyway, he changed my mind on Dirty Laundry. I won't go into it all here unless you really want me to, but he pointed out something to me that was fundamental to the character that did not make sense in that short, and it was like a light bulb going off in my head. I was like, you're absolutely right. I'm not as much of a fan of Dirty Laundry now, which kind of made me sad, because it's like I want to have something that represents the Punisher well and does justice by him. But so far, just about every iteration has in some way screwed it up. But I guess the best portrayal was Ray Stevenson. Anyway, The Punisher has starred in 3 featured films, but the timing seems right to finally bring one to life that was pitched over a decade ago. Okay, well, I don't even know what this is, so let's find out. Marvel fielded pitches for a Punisher movie in the MCU several years before the character got his own TV series, and now seems like the perfect time to bring Frank to the big screen. For the 4th time. The Punisher has starred in 3 theatrical movies of varying quality, but since Punisher Warzone 2008, I was right about the year at least, Frank Castle has stayed on the small screen. Job Bernthal's Job. Not John, Job. Okay, Job Bernthal's version of the character proved immensely popular during his time in Daredevil Season 2. I kind of liked him in Daredevil Season 2. The bullet in the head theory was stupid and ticked me off. And then when they started talking about his origin story, that ticked me off. And then the Punisher TV series ticked me off. But I've done 2 whole giant streams on my thoughts of the 2 seasons of Punisher on Netflix. You can find those on my channel. And the Punisher seasons 1 and 2, 2017 and 2019. And he'll soon return to the MCU as part of 2025's Daredevil Born Again cast. However, it's hitherto unclear what Marvel Studios' plans are for the Punisher, Daredevil, Kingpin, and other notable street-level heroes after Born Again. The Kingpin is not a street-level hero. If you meant to group the Kingpin amongst other notable street-level heroes, you are very much incorrect. But anyway, it's possible this side of the MCU will remain on the small screen, but given the immense popularity of the characters amongst terrible groups, it seems like another big screen treatment is overdue. Fortunately, several talented creatives have pitched Punisher movies, and at least one is still very interested in bringing his ideas to life. Okay. Adam Simon's Punisher movie would have been a spiritual successor to The Winter Soldier. Okay, I didn't know about this. Let's find out. While countless movie pitches for different Marvel heroes likely happen every year, actor and writer Adam Simon, who's currently working on the long-awaited Hollywood version of The Raid, okay, has been particularly vocal about his original idea and continued desire to make it happen. I can only hope, fingers crossed, that Adam Simon is a fan of the character at his core. Let's find out. Speaking with Comic Book, Simon described his original pitch, what would have put Frank at odds with one of the MCU's most influential individuals. According to him, the movie would have seen the Punisher hunting down Nick Fury for his role in the massive civilian casualties that have resulted from superhero activity. Read his full description below. No. Punisher and Nick Fury are allies. They may be unstable allies. They may be irascible allies, but they are allies. Nick Fury understands Frank Castle, and Frank Castle has a grudging respect for Nick Fury. They have been at odds at times, but they've always respected one another at the end of the day. The Punisher hunting down Nick Fury, you'd have to come up with a really, really good reason for that. Really good excuse for that. Okay, here we go. In my take, we find Frank Castle as we left him at the end of the series. Well, of course, you'd have to continue it off of Netflix. And if you're continuing it off of Netflix, then you've already got a flawed Punisher to begin with. Okay. Only now completely aware of the threat that superheroes and villains pose to mankind. Okay, so you're doing the Punisher kills the Marvel Universe. There was a one-off, basically a what-if comic graphic novel back in the 90s called The Punisher Kills the Marvel Universe. And in this iteration of things, Frank Castle's family doesn't die by mobsters. It is as a result of a superhero action in Central Park. Like the Avengers are taking on the Brood or something, and his family gets killed in the consequence of this. And the Avengers and the X-Men are there and everything. And the Punisher shows up in this iteration. He's a police officer, sees that his family's dead, and sees that they are the collateral damage of superhero activity. And he ends up shooting Cyclops and killing Cyclops there on the spot. And then he goes to jail. He gets put on trial. He's about to be executed, but he's rescued by a cabal of individuals who also hate superheroes. And then he's sent off to be a one-man army against superheroes. It is a very fun, very satisfying what-if issue. It is not general Punisher bait. Okay. In my take, we find Frank Castle as we left him at the end of the series, only now completely aware of the threat of superheroes and villains posed to mankind. So Frank Castle has to go gunning for the person who he feels is responsible for the innumerable civilian casualties. Okay, well, that's just stupid on its face, because unless you've completely lost your senses and have a delusional outlook on the world, Nick Fury is not directly responsible for all of that. The one who started it all by organizing these weapons of mass destruction to come together, Nick Fury. Okay, so the Punisher just thinks that the Sokovia Accords aren't enough, I guess. And it wasn't Nick Fury that put that together. And Nick Fury went rogue. Do you remember the part where Nick Fury went on the run? Remember the part where S.H.I.E.L.D. was trying to kill Nick Fury and he went into hiding? And that was in The Winter Soldier. That was in The Winter Soldier. This is supposed to be a sequel to The Winter Soldier? Really? When S.H.I.E.L.D. turned into Hydra, and then Captain America and Nick Fury, fought back against the corrupted S.H.I.E.L.D., now's the time to go after Nick Fury as the one responsible for superhero activity? Really? Okay, however, the Punisher versus Fury storyline wouldn't dominate the movie. Okay, eventually Frank would realize he's been set up, and he and Fury would be on the run from a villain or villains whom Simon didn't specify. How could he be... What? Okay, well, obviously, without all the details, I can't say. The whole thing sounds ridiculous. While Simon doesn't specify exactly when his pitch happened, he does say that it was in the dirty laundry era of the character, a reference to the 2012 Punisher short film starring Thomas Jane, viewable on YouTube, made to express his interest in stepping back into the role. Fury being the target of a vicious, militant pursuer, being misled by a powerful villain who eventually joins the forces of good, should sound familiar to the plot of Captain America Winter Soldier. It does quite a bit too much, but the comparison is hardly an insult given how great the Captain America sequel is. No, the Captain America sequel is great. Winter Soldier's probably up there with the best of the Marvel films, next to, say, Iron Man. But what you're describing for Punisher sounds repetitive. So the grounded action espionage tone works perfectly for the Punisher, which Simon agrees with, describing his movie as 3:10 to Yuma meets Leon the Professional by way of Winter Soldier. That's a whole lot of stuff to live up to. Why now is a great time for Simon's Punisher movie? Well, not after Secret Invasion. Not after Nick Fury has been completely and totally emasculated and reduced in any kind of influence or anything in the entire Marvel. Really? Now is the best time to turn Nick Fury into the bad guy the Punisher is hunting? What? Though Daredevil, the Punisher, and the rest of the Defenders Saga TV shows that were originally released on Netflix were always billed as MCU canon, that status came into question when Marvel Studios began producing its own shows for Disney+. Well, that was always a little nebulous, but now it's out of the, it's been clarified. However, Daredevil and Kingpin have reappeared in the modern MCU, and Frank Castle will soon follow suit in 2025's Daredevil Born Again. Given the immense popularity of Bernthal's version of Frank Castle, okay, maybe this is just me. Maybe I just live in a bubble. Is his portrayal all that popular? And this is nothing against John Bernthal. He's a great actor. I just think that the character that they wrote for him is not the Punisher. It's just not. It seems like the perfect time to bring him to the big screen after a 16-year and counting absence. Moreover, the Punisher, Daredevil, and other street-level heroes are exactly what the MCU needs right now. Really? Because they tried to keep Secret Invasion kind of street level. They tried to keep Falcon and the Winter Soldier kind of street level. They tried to keep Echo kind of street level. They tried to keep Hawkeye street level. And all of those shows are pretty much garbage. Okay, the cinematic universe's earlier years mixed more grounded stories with fantasy and sci-fi adventures, but the brand has largely lost its smaller scale side among larger Have you watched Disney Plus? I don't know if you've watched Disney Plus. Nearly all of their Disney Plus shows for Marvel characters are ground level. You know, you got some exceptions, of course, like WandaVision, not exactly ground level, but Hawkeye and I don't want to think about She-Hulk. Really? Okay. If the Punisher, Daredevil, Kingpin, and more can successfully transition to feature films, it would give the MCU a much-needed sense of tonal diversity that's felt like it's gone by the wayside. Only if the quality was up to snuff with previous MCU. If you're putting Winter Soldier up there as like the litmus test for a good MCU movie, I'll agree with you. Do I have any faith that current Disney/Marvel could do that with the Punisher, Daredevil, and Kingpin? No. Moreover, Adam Simon has made it clear that he continues to update his original pitch to match wherever the Punisher character is at so that it makes sense. It may be too late for Frank to hunt down Fury, which apparently is the crux of the entire pitch, so what would... Anyway, given the latter has stayed mostly off the grid for years, he was mostly off the grid at the end of Winter Soldier. Okay, again, if the Punisher movie was meant to pick up after Winter Soldier and after the Punisher TV series, Nick Fury has been out of the game. He hasn't had anything to do with anything. He's been off hiding and doing whatever until he got married to his Skrull wife and all this other nonsense. The pitch never made any sense in the first place. And now the key element of it doesn't make any sense in the continuity. So it may be too late for Frank to hunt down Fury, given the latter has stayed mostly off the grid for years, but the same premise could see him tracking down any number of heroes who have caused collateral damage. However, only time will tell what's next for the Punisher after Daredevil Born Again, and whether that continuation will be on the big or small screen. Okay, well, I don't know when this article came out, but Bernthal sent out this is a couple days ago. Bernthal sent out, I think, an Instagram or something, or a Snapchat or whatever in the last week or two that hinted that a Punisher series might be on the way. But that pitch for that movie, I'm amazed that the author of this has no idea about the Punisher kills the Marvel Universe. Because if you're talking about the Punisher hunting down some superhero or whatever, you think that'd be a direct reference to that, or at least someone would bring up, hey, he kind of did that in a what if kind of special one time. But no, if the Punisher goes hunting superheroes, then you've gone away from the street level stuff. Okay? If he goes hunting down other he already did that with Daredevil a little bit in the Daredevil TV show, right? No, you want the Punisher hunting down bad guys, street level, non-superpowered bad guys. Or if there are superpowers, they are very, very limited. Like the Russian, who was maybe a mutant or something. Not that I'm advocating for the Russian to come back. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of the Welcome Back Frank storyline, but they don't know how to do the Punisher right. The Punisher needs to be a serious, gritty, dark, Taxi Driver-esque noir kind of thing. It's not big, it's not flashy, it doesn't have laser beams going off into the sky. It's gritty, it's down to earth, it's dark. That's what it should be. Again, if you need some inspiration, Marvel, I swear, if you need some inspiration for at least an episode of a Punisher TV show, read One Way Fair. That could be a movie in and of itself. You could take the plot line for that and turn that into a feature film. A 90-minute, not 2 or 3 hour long, whatever, a 90-minute, crowd-pleasing, excellent film is contained in that one issue of The Punisher. I am not kidding. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. But they won't do it, because they have to try to tie it into all the other MCU stuff and this, that, and the other and everything else. You can't just have nice episodic one, contained little story that's not necessarily interwoven with everything else. What you need is somebody to take the Punisher on like they did with Joaquin Phoenix's The Joker, right? Something that could happen off to the side in the greater universe or something, but is just its own thing. Anyway, I could go on, but, I might be going off a little bit. Scannerd Athlete, you people are insane. You're wasting your lives making shit. Nobody cares. These movies are terrible. They have been. Post-Endgame, well, I'd actually argue that Endgame itself was pretty terrible. Endgame itself did not... Here's how I would have done Endgame. Okay. They kill Thanos. Right? The time-traveling Thanos and all that. No, that's not there. That's not there at all. That's not there at all. They recover the Infinity Gauntlet and they reverse everything. Right? They reverse everything. It happens in the first third of the movie. They get the Infinity Gauntlet back. The Hulk does his thing. Basically, you take the part at the end of Endgame and you put it up to the beginning. But they don't have some big battle with Thanos at the end. They don't have time-traveling Thanos. No. Hulk reverses everything. But who is still left in a lurch? Right? Hawkeye has his family back. Right? Everybody comes back. Everybody's alive again. But who doesn't have anyone back that they love? The Scarlet Witch. Right? Because Vision died before the snap. Right? Her brother died before the snap. Her parents died before the snap. All the people that she inadvertently killed in Civil War died in this, were already gone. Right? That all happened before the snap. So she's there and she's got nobody and nothing and she's still alone. And then she has her little break. And then she grabs the Infinity Gauntlet. And what is she going to do? She is going to end death itself. She's going to do a reverse Thanos. Instead of wiping out half of the population of the entire universe, she's going to find a way to stop everyone from dying ever again. She's going to get revenge on death. And in the process of her trying to figure this out, that's when the Avengers have to turn on one of their own. That's what should have happened, in my opinion. That's what should have happened in Endgame, is that you do a reverse Thanos with a sympathetic villain, and the Avengers have to take her down somehow. And in the process, what does she do? Well, she gets the gauntlet. She doesn't know how to use it. She's got to figure out how to use, like, her chaos magic or whatever else to try to actually destroy death. And this is actually a plot line from the Marvel Comics. In Secret Wars 2, there was a story, I think it was issue, I don't know, 6 or 7 or something. Anyway, the Beyonder comes to the same conclusion. Why don't I just destroy death? Then all the world's suffering would end. All the suffering in the universe would end. And he actually ends up doing it. He actually finds the entity that is death and destroys it. And then, but before this happens, every cosmic entity you can think of shows up. They can't stop the Beyonder. They're not powerful enough. The Beyonder is more powerful than them. And they're like begging him, don't do it. You have no idea what you're doing. And he does it. And suddenly afterwards, in the heat of things, he realizes his mistake and has to reverse it. I won't give it all away, but it's great. I actually know the name of Death. In the Marvel Universe, I know Death's first name as a result of this story. I won't tell you what it is. You'll have to find out for yourself. But either way, that should have been Endgame, where in order to buy time for her to figure out how to destroy death itself, the Scarlet Witch conjures up all of the heroes' former villains using the power of the Infinity Gauntlet, either to release them from jail or resurrect them, depending on the circumstances. And then you could have all the cameos in the world and all the rematches you could want. Oh, it would have been excellent. It would have been great. They screwed it up. Stupid time-traveling Thanos. Thank you, Faustonia. Holy cats, it's very generous of you. These articles seem to be a public display of how low the Dunning-Kruger effect curve can get. It's great when people who love the original stories get to guide story, e.g. Jackson and Lord of the Rings. Yeah. I don't know anything about Adam Simon. Maybe he's a huge Punisher fan or something. And admittedly, given the state of the MCU, if he had to try to pitch a movie to Marvel that they would accept, it would have to intertwine with the current MCU canon in some way to make any sense, or for them to do it, because they're so tied to this idea that every movie has to be tied into all the other movies in some way. You can't just have a nice, concise, isolated story that's happening off to the side, could be happening at any time. You can't do that. There has to be all this other, cameos and everything else. So maybe those are the constraints he was under in trying to come up with the plot, because the plot seems kind of, No, you want the Punisher going after street level bad guys, gangs, mafia families, things like that. Not Nick Fury. Maybe Nick Fury shows up as a cameo somewhere, helping him out with some equipment or some intelligence or something. That's usually what Nick Fury did in the comic books. He would help Castle out unofficially off the books because S.H.I.E.L.D. did not condone his tactics. I mean, Punisher is effectively an enemy of S.H.I.E.L.D. in most instances. But anyway, sorry, I went off on a tangent there a little bit. Let's see. Advocate has never been a good Marvel movie, just ones that are slightly less shitty. The first Iron Man and Winter Soldier, genuinely good movies. Genuinely good movies. And there's plenty of other good movies in there. The first phase or so of in the MCU, phase 1 and 2, thereabouts, for the most part, had some really good representations of the characters. I like Captain America. I liked Iron Man. Winter Soldier was great. The first Avengers movie hit the tones just about right for an Avengers movie. There was some good stuff there. I was really pleased to see some, as far as representation is concerned, representative of the characters I loved growing up, done some kind of justice and respect in those first few films. Things did not turn out well later on, but we've seen that. Matthew James, I like your tangents, Scribe. Well, thank you. I wax them every day. Green Badger Outdoors. Spoiler alert, Death's first name is Corky. No, it's Dave. It's Dave. Yeah, I gave it away. It's Dave. Death has a name, and it's Dave. But anyway, I think I've vented out as much as I have to say about the Punisher and current state of the affairs regarding him. And those are the two articles about him, both the terror of his logo, and apparently a pitch for a movie that no longer makes any sense, but sure, he needs his own movie. I don't disagree. He needs his own movie. Anybody out there who has any decision-making power whatsoever, I swear to you, you can make a relatively modestly budgeted film centered all around one issue of the Punisher comic book. You can make it simple. You can make it down to earth and gritty. I'm telling you, literally, because of the plot line, Taxi Driver, Joker, that kind of thing, that kind of aesthetic, you can do it and it will make money. If you do a Punisher movie based around this comic book, this one issue, you will make money. I ain't kidding. And yet you'll have to pay Chuck Dixon some royalties. I know. Marvel is so reticent to do any movies based on any previously written stories that Disney does not have 100% control over, lest they have to pay out any royalties to the previous artists or writers that created such stories. But I'm telling you, it'll be worth it. The budget does not have to be that big for the Punisher. It really doesn't. Just got to get the right people to make it and use the right material. And it's all just waiting for you. The Punisher should be the easiest guy to work on. He should be, but he's so controversial. No, he's not. No, he's not. He really isn't. Anyway, everyone, I'm going to call it here. If I missed your comments in the chat, by all means, leave a comment below once the video is posted. Leave a like on the way out if you would. I appreciate that as well. Also, if you didn't know, I have a Discord. Would you like to join my Discord? Well, you can. I just have to, cook up a link to the Discord because just like yesterday, I didn't pre-plan this as well as I should have, and so I don't have a link right this second. But I will in just a moment, and now I do. So there's a link in the chat to the Discord server. If you'd like to join the Discord, click on that. You'll find yourself on the landing channel called Say Hello. In addition to saying hello, you just have to say the secret word. The secret word tells me that you are not a bot, and that you actually watch the show. So today's secret word is Frank. Just say, hello, Frank, and I'll know that you watched the show. In addition to that, tonight at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern on Midnight's Edge After Dark, I'll be on over there on the panel to talk about our top 5 adaptations. That is movies and or series based on books, and our top 5 favorites amongst those types of things, sort of in honor of or in recognition of the release of Dune 2. And I have some thoughts on my favorite adaptation of Dune, but I'll hopefully talk about that tonight, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern on Midnight's Edge After Dark. But with that, everyone, thank you so much for joining me for this little nerdery and geekdom around the Punisher. If you have your own thoughts on the Punisher or other comic book characters that you appreciate, leave them in the comments below. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very, very little to do. Everybody who donated either to myself or to the GoFundMe's pinned to the top of the chat box, thank you guys so much for your generosity. It is very much appreciated. And with that, everyone, I hope you have a good rest of your Sunday. I hope the week ahead of you is productive and peaceful and calm. And I hope you're all safe and well. If you are not well, please get well soon, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.